My name is Carl, and I will be walking you through the Iowa DOT pre-trip for Class B vehicles. We'll first start with our air brakes test inside, followed by the in-cab inspection. Then we'll move to Form A in the engine compartment and Form B with the rest of the vehicle. We can now get started. There are two main air brakes tests you need to do, followed by two additional brake tests that are required by the in-cab inspection. The first air brakes test is the press and hold. You first need to start with the wax on, wax off mentality. Wax on the key, turn it on, and wax off the parking brake, turn it off. The first test, like I said, is the press and hold. You're going to press on the air brake, making sure your air pressure is 120 psi. You're going to press firmly on it and make sure you don't lose over 3 psi in 1 minute. So when you're doing this with the DOT inspector, make sure you count to 60 seconds in your head. For the quality of this video, we're going to cut it short and say that the air brakes work, which they do. Press and release. So now we're going to do the pump down test. This is probably the most vital air brakes test to do with the DOT inspector. You first need to say, I'm at operating range at 120 psi. You're going to pump down the brakes until 60 psi when a visible and audio warning will display on the screen here. So there we go. The audible and the visible warning came on here. Now you need to tell the DOT inspector you're going to pump it down to between 20 and 40 psi, roughly 30 psi, and the parking brake will engage. And there we go, the parking brake engaged. These are the two necessary air brakes tests for the air brakes section of the inspection. You will do 2 more brake tests once you complete the in-cab inspection. Truck and perform a safe start. To do that, you need to make sure the truck is in neutral, make sure the parking brake is engaged, look around the truck and make sure that no one is hanging on the truck or there's no obstructions, and make sure the clutch is all the way in. At this point, you can say you're performing a safe start to the DOT officer and turn on your truck. After you've done the pump down, your air pressure will be building up. I've already built it up just for the sake of time for this video. So now we are going to perform the in-cab inspection. And there's a couple phrases, I guess, I want to teach you in order to allow you to move smoothly through this as well as Form A and Form B. You need to say that things are securely mounted, have no cracks, breaks, bends, and for things that have air or any sort of liquid, they have no leaks. I've learned with the DOT that you can never say too much. So if you talk about your steering wheel, you can say it's securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends, and even if you said it has no leaks, they won't take points off. When you're doing your in-cab inspection, it's important to run it from top to bottom and left to right, just like you're reading a book. So I'm going to start right here in the top left with my safety belt. You need to say your safety belt is securely mounted. There's no cracks, breaks, bends. There's no frays. It pulls out properly, inserts properly and is secure, releases properly, and retracts properly. Now I'm going to move to my mirrors, like I'm working across, just like I'm reading a book. My mirrors, touch them, securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends. They are adjusted properly for my viewing, and there are no aftermarket stickers or cracks on the mirrors. Now I'm going to work towards my windshield. Touch it. Securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends. There's no chips from rocks. There's no aftermarket stickers. It's clean. And there's no leaks coming in from above, so it is sealed properly. I'll now work with the windshield wipers. Turn them on, make sure they work. They're securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends. And with windshield wipers, talk about leaks. When we talk about leaks, put on your wiper fluid, make sure it works. It's full. It's not streaking, so that means that your windshield wipers are sitting flush against the windshield, making sure they're working properly. Now, I will move to the next stage down. What do I run into? My horn. Tug on it. It's securely mounted. It works. There's 2 horns in this truck. Your city horn as well. Make sure you hit it. Works properly. Now I'm going to work here with the dash. There's 4 and 4 when it comes to the dash. 4 indicator lights and 4 gauges. I'll first start with the indicator lights. My right turn signal illuminates properly and is displayed. My left turn signal works properly and is displayed. My high beams work properly and are displayed. And my 4-way flashers work properly and are displayed. Those are the 4 indicator lights that you must talk about when you're doing your pre-trip. Now, you move to your 4 gauges. There's 2 gauges that require specific numbers and 2 that do not. I will start with the 2 that do not. First, your engine oil pressure in proper operating range, and there are no warning lights on. That's the phrase that you need to say for the first 2. So engine oil pressure, proper operating range, no warning lights on. Water temperature, proper operating range, no warning lights on. Now to the 2 gauges that require specific numbers, your voltmeter and your air gauge. So I'd say my voltmeter, proper operating range between 12 and 14 volts, and there are no warning lights on. My air pressure, proper operating range, cutting off at 120 psi for this truck, and there are no warning lights on. That's the 2 numbers that you need to know for your gauge test. Now, continue working across, working down. Now I hit my heater and defrost. Securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends. Turn it on. Make sure that it works. Reach above, reach below. Make sure that you're getting air out and tell the DOT officer that the heater and defrost is working properly. Now, come down here for my safety gear. When it comes to safety gear, think of 3s. You have 3 DOT-approved triangles. You have 3 spare fuses in here. And you don't have 3 fire extinguishers, but there's 3 things you need to say about your fire extinguisher. Your fire extinguisher is securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, or bends, or leaks. It's DOT-approved, and it's full. So 3s when you're thinking about your safety gear. 3 triangles, 3 spare fuses, and 3 things you have to talk about when it comes to your fire extinguisher. Securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends, or leaks, DOT approved, and it is full. So now we continue to work down, looking across, making sure we haven't forgotten anything. And now it comes to the 2 brake tests that are required for the in-cab inspection, like I talked about before. There's the tug test and the service brake test. You only need to talk about the service brake test, but you need to perform the tug test. So I will do that now. For the tug test, put your clutch in, engage the truck, put it in first gear. And for this, we're just making sure our parking brake works. So, keep the parking brake engaged, and you're going to release your clutch until you feel tension in the truck pulling on the parking brake. So release it. You can hear that change in noise, and I know you can't feel it, but I can feel that the truck is trying to pull on this parking brake. So at this point you can say I performed the tug test, clutch all the way in, take it out of gear, and allow the truck to idle. Now we perform our service brake test. And our service brake test we just talked about. We tell the DOT officer we are going to drive the truck 5 miles an hour forward. We're going to press on our air brakes and make sure the truck does not pull left or right. The reason we do this is to make sure that the brakes are adjusted properly and that there are no debris on the wheel wells that would maybe require the truck to pull left or right because the brakes would be slipping. That is the completed in-cab inspection. Now we will move to Form A. We're now going to start Form A of the Class B CDL pre-trip. Form A starts from the engine compartment and moves forward. You first start at the front of the truck. You have to remember 2 L's, lights and leaks. So first you need to look at the lights. They're all properly mounted, no cracks, breaks, or bends, and they're all proper color. Amber on the top and white lights down below. Now you need to look for leaks. Look under the truck. Make sure there's no puddles or anything that could be leaking from the engine compartment. Now we'll open the hood and start within the engine compartment. We're now going to start with the engine compartment section of Form A. We'll start from the top and work down. So, first things first, the reservoir for the coolant. Securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends, or leaks, and it's full and proper operating range. You can group all the hoses together. Say the hoses are securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends, there's nothing leaking from any of the hoses, and they have secure connections. You look here at your air compressor, it's gear driven, no cracks, breaks, bends, or leaks. The hoses are securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends, or leaks. You look at your oil level. You don't actually need to pull out your dipstick when you're doing the Class B pre-trip. You need to say, I checked the oil before I came, it's securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends, or leaks with it, and it's in operating range, which is full. You look here at the alternator, securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends, or leaks, because it can leak electricity. You look at the wires that go along with it. There's no frays, there's no cuts, there's no tears, they're securely mounted. A number you need to memorize is 3/4 inch of play. So you need to pull on the alternator belt, or the belt, because the alternator is belt driven. You need to say there's no more than 3/4 inch of play in the belt. Then you can keep working down. You can see that you have the water pump. Your water pump is belt driven. No cracks, breaks, bends, or leaks, and it's securely mounted. Keep working down and you hit your steering linkage. Securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends. Your power steering, right here, securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends, or leaks, because there is fluid in it. You need to make sure you say the fluid is full, and also that it is gear driven. We're now going to work on the steering, the brakes, and the suspension. So first, the steering. This is the rest of your steering linkage. Make sure you touch it securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends. All the cotter pins and keys and nuts and bolts are there, nothing's missing. You go to your suspension. There's 4 things on your suspension. You have your bushings, securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends, or leaks. You have your leaf springs, securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, or bends, and they're all in order. You have your U-bolts, securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends, and all your nuts are in place, so they're held tightly. And your socks, they're securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends, or leaks, because they do have fluid in them, so you have to make sure that nothing is leaking from them. Next, you'll move to your brakes. You have your brake hoses, securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends, or leaks. You have your brake chamber, securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends. You have your retainer ring, securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, or bends. And finally, you have your slack adjuster. There's no more than 1 inch of free play in your slack adjuster. You work inside. You have your brake shoes. There's more than 1/4 inch of life left on them. So how I remember some of these numbers: 1/4 inch on the brake shoes, 3/4 inch on the belt, so that makes 3/4 plus 1/4 equals 1 inch, so 1 inch on the slack adjuster. Now back to the brake shoes. More than 1/4 inch of life left on them, and there's no debris on the wheel well that could impede you from stopping. Now we'll work to the tire. You need to look at the inside, look at the wheel well, again making sure there's no debris, there's no aftermarket weld, securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, or bends on that. You'll work to the tire. Look across the top, make sure that it's evenly worn, there's no cracks, breaks, bends, bulges, bald spots. Another number you need to remember: 4/32 inch of tread on your steer tires. So it's 4/32 here. You can say you checked with the tire measure. Also, you need to look at the walls of your tires. Make sure there's no bulges, cracks, breaks, bald spots on that. You also need to say you tested your air pressure in your tire. It's 110 psi for your steer tires, and you must say that you tested it with a air gauge. You cannot hit it with a hammer or kick it with your foot, as these are not appropriate for the DOT pre-trip. Now we'll work at the front of the tire on the actual wheel. You need to look at the wheel, make sure it's securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends. Check and make sure there's no aftermarket welds on the wheel. Look at your lug nuts, make sure they're secure, no cracks, breaks, bends. Make sure no water's leaking from them. Make sure there's no rusty or shiny spots that could indicate that you have a loose lug nut. Finally, look at your hub oil seal. Make sure it's full, securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends, or leaks in this. Then, Give a glance at the whole front of the tire. Make sure, again, there's no bald spots, no cracks, breaks, bends, and that is in good condition and there's no air leaking. We're now going to start Form B of the CDL pre-trim. You will need to perform either Form A or Form B. You will not need to perform both. And this will be told to you beforehand by the DOT instructor. Form B starts from the mirror and goes all the way to the back of the truck. You'll first start with the mirror. Make sure you say the mirror is securely mounted. No cracks, breaks, bends. There's no aftermarket stickers. Make sure that it's adjusted properly for the person who's driving the truck. Next, you'll work to the door. Make sure the door opens properly. Lift up, make sure it's secure. Securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends. Look at the seal. Make sure there's no cracks, breaks, bends. Make sure it's securely mounted. Also, make sure that the door closes properly and is not open. Next, look down. The stairs, make sure they're securely mounted. No cracks, breaks, bends, and there's no debris on them that could obstruct you from getting in or out of the truck. Now, look at the fuel tank. There's 4 things you need to remember. Make sure fuel tank securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends, or leaks. The straps securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, or bends. The cap securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends. There's no gas leaking from it. Finally, the hoses securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends, and there's no gas leaking from them as well. We're now going to look at the body of the truck. We can start first with the DOT approved reflectors. Make sure that you say they're DOT approved and properly placed and in good condition. We'll now look at the frame of the truck. Make sure the frame is securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends. There's no holes that aren't supposed to be there, and there's no aftermarket welds. Look at the cross members here, securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, or bends. You look now under the truck at the drive shaft, securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, or bends. And the U-joint, securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, or bends. You also want to say that there's no debris wrapped up in the drive shaft that could impede it from going. Now, just like in Form A, we need to work on the suspension, the brakes, and the tires. You only need to do one set. So, first start with your suspension. The bushings, securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, or bends. Leaf springs, securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, or bends, and they're all in line. Finally, the U-bolts, securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends, and all the nuts are in place. You don't need to say shocks because the truck you will test in will not have shocks in the rear. Finally, the brakes. Brake hoses, securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends, or leaks, no air leaking. The brake chamber, securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, or bends. The retainer ring, securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, or bends. Finally, again, the slack adjuster, no more than 1 inch of free play. It's securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, or bends. Moving to the tires. If you look inside, the brake pads, again, more than 1/4 inch of free play. And also, the brake drum, securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, or bends, and it's free of debris or contaminants that can impede it from stopping. The tire. Your drive tires need 2 32 inch of tread depth. Again, you can check it with a tire meter. Also, 100 PSI inflation on the rear tires. Again, you must say that you check this with an air gauge, not kicking it or hitting it with a tire or with a hammer. Again, look at your tire. Make sure it's evenly worn. There's no cracks, breaks, bends. There's no air leaking from it. Look at your walls of your tires. No cracks, breaks, or bends. Look at the space in between the tire. Make sure there's no debris lodged in there, and make sure that the tires are evenly spaced. Working to the outside, you look at the wheel. No cracks, breaks, bends. There's no aftermarket welds. Your lug nuts, securely mounted. No cracks, breaks, bends. There's no water leaking from it. There's no rust that says it may be loose. Your axle oil seal, securely mounted. No cracks, breaks, bends. There's no leaks in that, and it is full. Form B concludes at the back of the truck. First, look at your lights. Make sure they're securely mounted. No cracks, breaks, or bends, and they function properly. You can then look at all your lights down here, as well as your reflectors. They're DOT approved. properly mounted and in the correct position. Look at your mud flaps. Make sure they're securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, or bends, and that they're all there. If your truck has a door, make sure it's securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, or bends. It secures properly and the seal is intact. If your truck has a ramp, make sure it's securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, or bends, and the latch is properly working. Finally, at the front of the truck is the exhaust stack. Make sure it's securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, or bends, or leaks. You'd identify a leak by carbon deposit or by holes. That's the completed Class B CDL pre-trip. Like I said before, there's one key phrase you need to know. Securely mounted, no cracks, breaks, bends, or leaks if they do apply. Before you go in, make sure you take a deep breath and relax. You can never say too much, so if you're in doubt, always say too much rather than too little. And if you forget something, feel free to tell the DOT officer and you can go back. You know the material and you're ready to test. Relax and you'll do a great job.